And the truth is that as humans, as physical beings, we have the need for barriers, right? We have skin, we have separate bodies, we have separation in these realms. But when we go into those higher frequency realms, we are not, we do not need to push or pull. And so the idea of protection really melts away. So maybe we could look at it like this: instead of going for protection, we want to aim towards those frequencies where protection isn't necessary.
Today, I'd like to welcome Allison Holley, author and channel of New Earth Frequencies. Welcome, Allison. It's such a pleasure and an honor to have you here today.
Oh, hi, Chrissy. Thank you for having me on. This is going to be a really fun conversation.
Yes, for sure. We've already had some fun before we pressed record, so
Yes.
I'm really excited to dive in. So, um, first and foremost, I just always like to get a picture of your journey. So, you're a channel and an author. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how that unfolded for you?
Yeah. So, all of our journeys start in so many different places, but really this conscious channeling began for me in 2012. And at that time, so I was running a women's fitness studio, and I was really like kind of overworked and all sorts of things. I had just a regular life in a lot of ways. And I went through the breakdown of the relationship that I was in. And as that was all breaking down, it triggered this spiritual awakening, which for me, some people, their spiritual awakening is like an aha moment. Mine was everything's crashing down. I feel like I'm on psychedelics, even though I wasn't at all. And I started spontaneously channeling at that time. So, what would happen for these channeling moments is I would start to literally feel my frequency vibration amping up. And it was like almost as if I could describe it, it's almost as if I was going into an anxiety attack, but instead of leaving the body, which typically, I've had both experiences, sort of leaving the body for that anxiety attack, it actually was just, I could feel my energy field amping up and expanding, and everything got really bright. And both times, the first two times that it happened, I actually pulled my car over and called my mom on the phone. And the first time it was actually a mediumship channeling. So my grandmother, who was passed away, came through and she delivered a message. And I remember at the time it was raining outside, and I parked my car and it was raining. And yet it literally felt like I was engulfed in the sun. It was so bright. And I was seeing in a totally different dimension. So I was channeling all of this. It was just coming through. A lot of it I don't remember. But the parts that I do remember were really beautiful and just this light shining. The second time that it happened again, I pulled my car over and I called my mom, and I had this whole download of, I know, thank God for those phone calls, but neither of us really remember what came through fully, but I was having really intense visions for the second time. After those times, I started practicing entering that space and asking questions consciously. And I would just sit in meditation. And I remember at the beginning, it was me sitting in meditation for anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour or longer, just deeply listening, trying to understand. I would ask a question and then I would get these little bits of information throughout that whole process too. I mean, like I said, I was seeing symbols, and it was as if I was on psychedelics, and I did not have any sort of history of plant medicines, intentional or otherwise. There was a lot going on, and I would see sequences, and it would be so strong that my whole world would start spinning. It was very, very intense. Um, and what was happening during that time, I now understand a bit more of it, was I was jumping dimensions. I was really moving from vibrating at a three-dimensional sort of space and purely human thought process and things like that into a higher frequency space. So the reason that so much of my life was falling apart was because the things that did not match with that new frequency that I was bringing through, they had to fall away. So, and I want to mention this because I think a lot of people in a spiritual awakening, it feels like life is falling apart, you know? And
Yeah,
even for,
I'm curious if we can pause here
let's
because
do it.
you said in 2012, and in 2012 was when I overdosed. I was an addict and I overdosed, and after that was a huge part of my spiritual awakening. Now, I had already been into it, but it really opened up
Yeah.
around that time. And I've heard so many others. I've watched a lot of podcasts, I've interviewed a lot of people, and 2012 is a monumental year. I'm curious if you have any insight into if this is a coincidence, a synchronicity, or if something around 2012 happened for all of us.
I love that so, so much. It makes me want to cry. Thank you for asking me. I can get going. And so just, feel free to interrupt because I will talk a lot. Um, I always like to tune in. My higher wisdom has more to say than my mind. So I really like to listen. So what we do as humans, I'll try and like synthesize this because I have a lot to say about it. But what we do as humans, we're in these, we could call them lower frequencies. It doesn't mean anything wrong. It's just we're in a very dense frequency right now. And because of that dense frequency, we play with time, and we play with time in a very specific way. So, what's happening right now is collectively, time is sort of speeding up. Okay. And so we've got, if we look at it as a wavelength, and the way that I've seen time is actually more like whirlpools, but if we look at it as wavelengths, that's a little more helpful for us to see. And what we've got is these real big wavelengths, and they're starting to go like this, right? It's like, whoa, it's really compressed. So we've got this amplification of consciousness that's occurring. And it started to really amp up, and there are timeline points. There are vortices of energy that hit the timeline at different points throughout human history. So we've got these epochs, these eras where certain things occur. In 2012, we hit one of those amplification of energy points, right? So we've got the Mayan calendar, which really showed us all of this. And so there was an intensity of energy that was available to us. And the way I like to see it is almost like popcorn popping, right? So we're all these little kernels. When the heat gets to a certain point, we pop through into the next level of consciousness. So collectively, that is what was happening. People who went through an awakening in 2012, I'm just kind of receiving this right now. It's a particular type of what we would call light worker or seer, is what I'm hearing. And we're meant to usher in, a lot of us are way showers. We're meant to usher in the next frequency layer. So for people who went through that awakening in 2012, and man, people who went through it before, I'm like, whoo, hands down to you, because there was a lot of dense energy to sort of cut through. And those of us in 2012, a lot of that groundwork has been paved. But now what we're doing is we're moving into creating the real, we're not creating, we are creating, and we're grounding in the templates for new earth consciousness. So yeah, I see a lot of agreement. I'd love to hear from you, your experience with this.
Yeah, Well, and I hear you speak. And when I heard you take us through that journey of these little, I forget what you called them, but these little epoxies of time
Yes.
and just my own experience, it was after that that I was introduced or that I found Christ consciousness.
Yep.
And that became like everything to me. And just, I can't put my finger on specific people or specific experiences. Just I hear this a lot, 2012, 2010, 2011, 2013. Like it's all kind of around, the same time. And I've heard of these waves as well. And so just hearing you just validates everything that I have felt to be true and explains a lot of my own journey. And when you were describing your experience about these visions, these really strong visions and this vibration that you would feel, it was kind of like I was checking some boxes over here in my experience,
Yeah.
like, oh, that's what that might be, or that's what is.
Yes.
And so I'm curious because I've also heard that I've interviewed a few channelers and I've watched a ton of channeling.
Yes.
And so, what I understand, I'd love for your perspective on this. What I understand is that the vessel also has to expand to the vibration of what's being channeled. Would you say that's correct? I'd love to have you
Yes.
speak about that.
Yes. Really beautiful. So I talked a little bit about dimensions that
Mhm.
we are experiencing. And even I use this language of like we're moving into higher dimensions, higher frequency realms, because the energy vibration is what we would call higher, but it's not necessarily better and it doesn't go up. It's more like circles or spheres. So in the center sphere, we have this 3D concept that we are in. So we go from source and we bring ourselves into a denser and denser and denser realm so that we can have this earth frequency experience or this earth experience. And as we start to wake up, we then become aware of more and more and more layers outside of that real dense frequency. So we start to awaken to the energies and the interdimensional beings, right? So our starseed origins or our ET family, all sorts of different things that are existing in these different frequency realms. So when we talk about expanding our consciousness to be able to not only hold those new truths, but also even just be aware of them, what we're doing is we're further and further unfiltering ourselves into the truth of who we are on those expanded frequency wavelengths. And I know that I use a lot of, it's hard to use language to describe some of these concepts because what's happening in these denser realms is we're using our mind. Our mind is navigating our experience. And the way that the mind is built, specifically what I call lower mind, the ego mind, is it's built to recreate experiences. And the reason it does that is because it's got to filter out everything that is beyond the experience that reaffirms, hey, we're just human. I'm just this person living in this. There's only this experience and all of that. When we die, nothing else happens. Our mind has to reaffirm these paradigms in order for us to play this earth game. So as we start to awaken, the filters, the parameters of the mind, they start to open up, they start to break down. In this, when this is happening, it often feels like our life is falling apart. It often feels like nothing's working. Oh man, it's so scary. Everything's falling apart. What's happening is the mind and all of the attachments that we have, the walls are falling down and we're starting to open to perceive new information. but all of the things that we were attached to, all of the programs that we were running that made everything feel safe and normal, those are falling apart because we're expanding into brand new territory. And it's old news for our soul. Like our soul is like, yeah, this is what we know. But our human perception and our human experience feels like, whoa, this does not make sense anymore. This is a lot, you know? In these higher frequencies, it's not necessarily so much language as it is colors, symbols, sacred geometry, light and sound patterns. It breaks down to that level. And then what we do is we try and interpret it into our human experience. And it's a lot. It's a lot to do, right? So to bring ourselves there, what we do is we start to learn how to really be comfortable with our bigness. And
Mhm.
then we start to learn how to navigate through the heart. Those two things, the reason that so many people are saying be in the heart is because the heart is the portal, it's the connection zone to the all that is. It's the expansion. The heart speaks that language. So when we can be in the heart and allow our mind to follow that, it becomes easier to be in these higher frequency states and expand into all that we are.
Yeah. Wow, that was so beautiful. The way that, I mean, and I hope the listeners can tap into the energy here because
Yeah.
I heard you, but like I felt it as well. And it was just so beautiful. And it leads me to another curiosity that I watched a channeler on a podcast, and I actually can't remember the entire context around the conversation, but as you were describing that, I heard something he said, and I heard it again, like we're actually, those who are channeling are actually just remembering
Yeah.
their ability to channel. I'd love it if you could elaborate on that.
Yes. One of the things that I find I always like to center. So, all of us are already channeling. And we have, this is my interpretation of what channeling is. We're all channeling. Some of us are channeling very unconsciously, but we're all channeling our soul into this physical reality to have this human experience. And we're doing it unconsciously because we think that we're separate. We think that we're separate from our higher selves. We think that we're separate from God, all of these things, from source, from the all that is, from the universe. And when we are consciously channeling, what we're doing is we're tapping into the realms of the all in higher and higher frequencies. And in the realms of the all, the everything that exists, right? So if we're like Russian nesting dolls, right? So here's the human experience, and then here's the fourth dimension and the fifth, and we kind of move out further and further until we're a part of the all that is. And when we connect with the all that is, time no longer exists. So we have access to everything, everything. And it doesn't matter if it's the future or the past or a different lifetime or somebody else's experience, like no other exists. We are one in that. And we have access to all of it. So, yes, that's what we're doing when we're channeling. We're learning. And one of the things that I find really important is to guide people. There's a slight difference between mediumship and channeling in my perception, and mediumship is connecting to a certain realm. And my guidance in teaching people to channel is to help connect to an even farther out realm where you trust yourself and you're moving beyond the paradigm of right and wrong, good and bad, and you're moving into that infinite consciousness where you really can bring in those very high frequency understandings And as always, it's always filtered through the human, right? So you'll see so many channelers bring through the same information, but from their own perspective, because we're still, each of us are like these crystals that you shine the sun through, and it's going to look a little different for every single person, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. That clarifies like a lot of different things. And one of the things that I have noticed, I've been curious about, you mentioned conscious channeling, and
Yes.
you also mentioned the difference between mediumship and channeling, this like slight difference that it's a different realm. So one of the things that I notice is that there's trance channelers, conscious channelers, there's people who channel their higher self or spirit guides or ascended masters. I'm curious if you could help paint a picture or educate us on what those differences are.
Beautiful. So, like I said, with the crystal, I'll just bring this out. I'm a bit like a kindergarten teacher, so I use all these props, right?
I
So,
love it.
yeah, I was showing my little, before we started recording, I'll just show the viewers. This is my inner child. Like, because we're here to become like little children again, right?
Yeah.
That purity it's in all of us.
Mhm.
So, we're all these beautiful crystals. And if I shine the sun through this crystal has a very particular template, right? And that structure, that template is going to shine the light through in unique ways, very unique to this crystal. So each of us have a template. And what I've seen is there's a group of beings. Of it's really a frequency if we get less linear with it, called the Council of Nine. And when we decide to become human, when we decide to incarnate, whether it's one time or 3,000 times, I've connected with people who've had a lot of lifetimes. I'm like, what have y'all been doing? So when we decide to create this human experience, we sort of work with the Council of Nine. And I'm actually hearing that not everybody works with the Council of Nine. But chances are, if you're watching this, you did, because those who work with the Council of Nine have specific work, specific purposes, at this time, right? It tends to be the light worker crew, right? The ones who are like, hey, we're here for something specific, and then we forget. But we very easily remember. So I talk a lot, I'm going to show this. I talk a lot about this in my newest book, which is called Ecstatic Playground. And you can see I even have the prism and source light coming through, because I've had many visions of this. So each of us has a template. Our template is what is created to say, this is the person that you're going to be. This is the things that you want to do in this life. This template is going to help you move through this timeline in this experience called Chrissy or called Allison, right? We come from this infinite all is one, and we have these unique experiences. And so we build our template and we say, okay, this is what I want to do, who I want to be, how I want to experience this. It includes so many things. So when I'm channeling and I'm connecting to those higher frequency understandings, I'm going to be bringing it through. And first of all, I'm going to be asking questions that are very specific to what I'm curious about. You mentioned before we recorded that you trust your curiosities. That's so key. Trusting our curiosities is what leads us to our blueprint. It leads us to our human template, right? So when
I,
we're like, yeah,
I'm like, oh, I'm so smiling right now. I love
yeah,
that.
yes, because what we are curious about, what we're excited by, it's not the same for all of us,
Mhm.
you know? And we can trust that because that's what leads us to the truth of our template. What are the things that we're curious about? That's what we're here to bring. And so, as a channel, as a conscious channel, I'm going to be asking specific questions in that space. I'm going to be curious about specific things. It's going to be different for each person. So, and this is something that I teach. I teach people how to channel. And when I do this, what I do is, they're like, is it okay to access specific ascended masters? Or is it okay to ask this question? And it's really beautiful because everybody has something different that they want to dive into. So I say yes. Ask those questions because those questions are specific to you. One of the things that I channel a lot about is this awakening and ascension process. And I channel a lot about time. I channel a lot about life purpose for myself and others. I channel a lot about the Garden of Eden. Those templates are starting to come through recently because that's what my next book is about. So our curiosities are really activation points within our template to help guide us to who we're meant to be. So I'll kind of pause there because I know I'm getting a little off topic from your question.
No, it's okay. I know like I had a few more curiosities. Like, so is it your higher self that you're channeling? Like, I'm a little confused about like who is the Council of Nine? Like,
Okay.
I'm like, I want to talk to all of them.
Yes. Amazing. Amazing. You want to talk to all of them. Okay. So let's see if I can synthesize this and simplify it because it is simple, but it's a new language.
Yeah,
It's a new way of looking at things.
yeah,
So I really do like to use that Russian nesting doll example,
yeah.
right?
Mm,
When we move into these more expanded frequencies, we have the understanding that even though you're having your experience and I'm having my experience, and that, person over there is, and, those people are, we're actually one.
mhm.
We're actually, it's like these little sort of rivulets from source. It's like all of these different experiences, but it's one, right?
Mm,
And so if I'm connecting to different beings, they are different beings, but they're also me. This, let's see, how can I do this? A lot of time, especially toward the beginning of my awakening, the very first question that I asked when I went in consciously to explore was, where am I from? Because I was like, I know that I'm one of those star seeds. I
yeah.
was like, I heard the term star seed and it practically made me want to cry. I was like, I know that's me. I know that's me. And so I dived in and I was like, where am I from?
Mm,
And I heard Andromeda. And so I started investigating. I actually Googled, is Andromeda a starseed thing? Like, what is it a real place? Because I didn't actually know at the time.
yeah.
Turns out, yes, it's a galaxy, and that is where my soul was seated. So when we come from source, we sort of go to these different places where our soul has its initial vibratory experience. So my initial experience was within the Andromedan galaxy. So I'm an Andromedan starseed. I've been lots of places. I've had lots of experiences as a soul, but that was my initial one. And now I'm having my first human experience. And I get to channel those codes of all that I've learned, specifically the Andromedan experiences, into this human experience, into this physical reality. I bring all of those codes and I bring them here and I, fractal them out into this beautiful rainbow, right? So let's bring it back to channeling. If you are wanting to connect with these other beings, it's sort of like, I guess we could look at it like soulmates.
Mm,
We have these soulmates here on earth, and we're like, oh, I'm so drawn to that person. I just want to be around them all the time. Why is that? Well, because we have a soul connection. So maybe you're someone who really wants to channel Lilith, or maybe you're someone who really connects with Isis energies, right? And, we all have these different connections, or maybe you're really like, oh, the Council of Nine. Well, that's because there's something being activated in you that's saying, there's something about that that's for me, right? So we connect with these other energies or beings or groups, and those groups or beings or energies have information for us. And here's the really beautiful thing, we also have information for them. So when I first started channeling, I connected to the Andromedan Council, and I was like, oh, what's going on? They said, we are you and you are us. And I was like, wait a minute. They were like, don't downplay, essentially, not in so many words, but they said, you're having a different experience. It's not less than, it's a different experience, and we're learning from you as well. So it's very symbiotic, it's very connected. So yeah, hopefully that connects all of the dots that
Yeah.
we were diving into.
Yeah, totally. And I just want to highlight a few things that really stood out, which the first or the most recent was that we have information for them and that we're helping, like we play a part as well. It's not just that these higher beings are coming to help us in this human form because we're so out of sorts and like,
Yeah.
and swimming in judgment and all this density, but that like we have something to offer too. That
Yes.
really just made me smile because it was like, yeah, we all have a specific purpose. And then the other thing was that you said that it's like we're all one. And
Yeah.
so if we're able to tune into the Council of Nine or Jesus or Saint Germain, it's like that's because we are a part of that. There is no separation. And so
Yes.
it just really landed like in a very whole expanded view for me. So that was awesome. Thank you so much for that.
I love that. I mean, I'm glad that you highlighted that, because I think so often we think of ourselves as humans as like these damaged, like we're just messing it all up. And, I know I have felt that many times. Even recently, I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
But we're not, we're really not. We're doing powerful work here. And even if we're not doing it consciously, I do want to say that even if it seems like we're messing up and we're literally doing things that seem harmful, just our existence, just our being is powerfully shifting the planet. We are I mean, yeah, so I just want to say that, because I witness in myself and others a lot of people who are here to do this transformative work also have a lot of deep perfectionism
Yes.
and fear of messing things up, and it can be really hard to move through that. But just existing is it's truly doing like 90, 80 to 90% of it. And we have choice, and we can do all sorts of things, and we can really deeply live in alignment with our life purpose and our template, and we can be super joyful and free and create change. And if it seems like we're messing up, or it seems like we're not doing it perfectly, just existing is doing it. It is doing it.
Yeah. I know I'm being reminded right now of an interview I just recently did with a man who researches near-death experiences. And I asked him, why do we keep reincarnating? Like, what messages from heaven do you
Yes.
have about why we keep doing this over and over and over again? Because there are so many people, myself included, I've been through this many, many times, where it's like, I just feel like I don't fit here in this realm, this time space realm on this planet, whatever we want to call it. And he said that the reason we continue to reincarnate is for the love of creation.
Yes.
And
I
what
love
you
that.
just said, like just existing, like even if we're not doing anything other than just existing, we're contributing and it
Yes.
matters.
Yes. It's so true, and I love that, and it just goes to show when we're starting to channel, when we're receiving this information, there are so many things. It's, we'll be in a group where multiple people are channeling on their own, and they'll come back and share, and it's like half of them got the same experience. So I love that, because that was one of the profound truths that came to me when I started channeling was, we're literally here to be. We're here because we're here to play, we're here to create, we're here to enjoy ourselves. I mean, hopefully we enjoy ourselves, but it's just the experience. It's source becoming everything and having unique experiences. Yes, really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yes. We're here to play and be
Yes. Yes.
and have fun. So I'm curious, how does it work for you? Like, do you close your eyes? Do you go somewhere? Are you present? Like, what is that process of channeling like for you? Because I do understand it's different for everybody.
Yes, absolutely. So, a couple things that I was told when I first started this channeling journey, guided by, my guidance team, was that I'm what is called an open channel. So, I basically get myself into the frequency and I tune in and I listen and I receive from wherever needs to speak to me at the time.
Mm.
And a lot of people, when I tell them that, it's like, oh, don't you need to protect yourself? Well, one of the things that's really important, yeah, I love that you're like, we're fine, we're fine.
I'm gonna bookmark that and we'll come back to that because I do
Okay, good.
want to
Okay,
say
good.
that.
We'll talk about that more then. But essentially, I'm bringing myself beyond the need for protection. So we'll dive into that again. But so I'm an open channel and I just allow the information that needs to come through for that particular moment in time and experience, that transmission to occur. Most of the time, to me, it feels like I'm channeling from my higher frequency self.
Mm.
Okay. And I want to say, since I just mentioned that we all already are our higher selves.
Mm.
Right. So it's not an out there being. It's all kind of right here. When we move into those frequencies, we can really experience that. So I'm channeling that. I'm also having conversations with other groups, frequencies, and beings. I do connect with a lot of star frequencies, a lot of ET groups, I guess we could call it, interdimensional beings.
Mm.
Um, and sorry, I'm getting the light in, but I'm like, I love the sun.
So pretty. I like it. I've been watching it like move.
Yes, yeah. I'm like, oh, I love that sunshine.
Yeah.
Um, and so for my process, it's gone through a real evolution. And what I've had visions of the future and what's going to be happening for me with this whole process. So I'll tell you how it kind of started and where it's going. So it started with me spontaneously channeling, and it was just like boom, and just started coming through. But I was always present. So I never leave the experience, I never go unconscious. However, I do become very, very, very present, which sometimes that means I don't fully remember the last thing that I said because I'm so in the present moment that it's just coming through boom, 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 boom. Now, sometimes it comes through word for word. Most of the time, it comes through as a frequency that I then translate into words, right? So I'm getting all sorts of things. I'm getting pictures, I'm getting downloads of full understandings, and then I translate it into words. Recently, within the past 6 months, I've started bringing through light language. And what that is it's not even words, right? It's the frequency and it attunes my body. It's really a powerful experience. But it's not even words. It's like colors and frequency. And I can tell you have that experience and understanding. So when I started, like I said, I would practice and I would get myself and I would sort of retrace my steps and I would get myself into that trance and I would listen and bring through the information. And at first, I could write it down. Like it was just a couple sentences and it would move so slowly that I could write it down. And now, as it's happened a lot in this podcast recording. I'm constantly channeling. A lot of times I'm channeling with my eyes open, I'm receiving. It's the depth that I can get into. So if I want to get really deep, a lot of times I still close my eyes. And that also helps me internally signify, okay, now we're going into higher frequency. And it's not just my mind. I'm receiving, I'm streaming this consciousness through the whole time. And then what I've been shown moving forward is that I will continuously be speaking with my eyes open, channeling. Okay, go ahead. I know you're really resonating with a few things.
Yeah. Um, it's just, yeah. So what I'm getting out of this is that, like, I already know, how. Like,
Yes.
what you're describing to me are little bits and pieces of what I've already been doing. And it happens when I'm in a coaching session, or um, just sometimes with my kids, or, you mentioned that presence, like, you're so present that you don't really remember because you're just in the experience of what you're saying. And
Yes.
so, yeah, it's just really cool to to be here and to hear all this, and to, yeah, have it come through. And I you mentioned protection, and this is something that I struggled with it, because I grew up in the Catholic religion, and when I was younger, before I started my addictions, I would see things, I would hear things, and I would go and, share it. And then, because of the environment I was in, I was told that I shouldn't listen to it, that it's the devil trying to tempt me and take my soul. So,
Wow.
yeah. So I started, that's when I started the eating disorder when I was 5. It was too intense, and I just had to numb it all out. And then I started drinking and doing drugs. And so, as I recovered and allowed myself to feel, and, just allow the world and heal these things, I have learned that I don't believe that I have to pray for protection every time, because if I'm if I trust that I'm protected, then I'm protected always.
Yes.
And so that's just what I've made up from my own experiences. I'd love to hear what you have to say about protection.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This is me just listening to make sure that I've got the full what I need to bring through for right now. So, the idea of protection itself, the whole concept of protection, is something that only exists in the human and astral realms. And this is something that a lot of people have kind of different ideas around. But what has been shown to me is when we get up in frequency, especially when we get into those oneness frequencies, we don't have the polarities, or the polarities are balanced. And so there's no other. And so there's nothing to protect ourselves from. When we tap into the realms where we know we are eternal, there's not even a need for protection. That being said, I teach a bit about boundaries and empathic abilities and things like that. So as we're learning to trust our eternal nature, we're probably going to need boundaries in the meantime, right? We're going to need to say, you know, and really when we have boundaries, what we're doing is we're stating our preferences. We're stating this is, and I'm making it conscious. I will only allow in this. And I'm making it conscious for myself, because when I make it conscious for myself, I start to vibrate with that truth. And then only things that match that vibration will be welcome into my field, right? And the truth is that as humans, as physical beings, we have the need for barriers, right? We have skin, we have separate bodies, we have separation in these realms. But when we go into those higher frequency realms, we are not, we do not need to push or pull. And so the idea of protection really melts away. So maybe we could look at it like this: instead of going for protection, we want to aim towards those frequencies where protection isn't necessary.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I actually, that's how I teach like something similar in this human world with our
Yes.
with my clients. It's like
Yeah.
a lot of people have this misconception that boundaries are like walls to put up. And I teach it from the perspective that boundaries are an act of love. And
Yes.
it's really what we're saying yes to. It's
Beautiful.
not really to keep anything out. It's just to define who we are based on what we like and what resonates. And
Yes.
so it's in this 3D physical dense world, it's the concepts are really similar to
Yes.
the other dimensions as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're really collectively starting to come into the quantum realms and the quantum realities of things,
Mm.
where it used to be, okay, take care of your physical self, and then you can explore these other realms. And it's like, oh, okay, so I can allow myself to feel safe, but then I'm going to come back into this physical experience and I'm going to need boundaries and things like that. What we're starting to recognize is those higher frequency realms are actually the truth that we bring into this physical experience.
Yeah.
So it's we're operating with that sense of eternal nature all the time.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad, I mean, it's like, yeah, we're getting it, we're getting it.
Yeah,
Yes.
all of this is coming through in this conversation for
Yes.
whoever is meant to hear it. And I
Yes.
feel like there's a lot of energies and people and beings out there that will benefit from what we're talking about so far. I'm curious. I know we've been talking for a while, and I have a couple of questions that I ask all my guests. So before we go there, I'm curious if there's any messages or anything that wants to come through based on the, I know we're recording this right now, but there's an energetic collective that's going to be exposed to this. Like, is there anything that wants to come through for those who are going to listen?
Yes. I'll just tune in for a moment. Mm. Well, the people who are listening to this and watching this, everyone's going to have a slightly different role moving forward. Always navigate to the highest frequency that you can perceive. Some people are going to be boots on the ground working with all of the changes that are occurring, because the changes are really amping up. But we want to always make sure, and this is true across the board, to move into those higher frequencies, which means moving farther away from being motivated by fear and moving toward what we want to bring through, right? So if we desire for peace, we don't fight the war, right? And we don't fight against the war either. So we really navigating away from the fear. And also, this is the other part: be aware moving forward, no matter what your role is or your purpose is in the things that are unfolding in the future. Be aware that the transmutation happens within the physical body. So a lot of times we'll see things happening in the world and we'll still perceive it as it's happening out there. But all of the shifting that we witness in the world is transmuting through the body. And this is what I'm hearing is really, this is for everyone listening to this. We are all transmuting these energies through our own bodies. So if you're witnessing something difficult external to you, pay attention to what that shows you within, transmute that energy within, which means really shift your own internal structure to vibrate with more love. And you'll witness that that is doing the external work as well. I think that's it.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. That was so beautiful. So I have three questions that I ask all my guests. And the first question is, how would you define God?
You, all of us, you, me, all of us, everything in existence. Yeah.
Thank you. You're the second person who's said you.
Yeah.
I love it.
We're starting to get it.
What I see is that there's a lot more consciousness around all of it. And so we are starting to collectively see that we are all God. So I love it.
Yes. Yes.
The second question is, and I think you've probably answered this a little bit already, but the second question is, what would you say is the purpose of life?
Oh, it's like this is the part of me that just wants to channel for like an hour.
Take as long as you need.
Because I just want to, I just want to speak like, my loves. It's so that you can enjoy yourself. It's so that you can play. It's so that you can stream that infinite light through yourselves. It's so that you can have these experiences. It's a wild, wild ride in these bodies. And what we get to do is have a unique, myopic, very small perception. But in that pinpoint of perception, we get infinite perception. We're able to see infinitely within just this one perspective, this one human vessel. And it is so, so, so good if we can allow ourselves to not believe that we're victims, to not believe that we're tied into this experience, to not feel trapped or stuck. If we can move out of that perception, we can see how infinitely joyful this experience is, and just do all of the things that you desire, because your desires, they're your curiosities. Those are all the things that are pointing you to be who you were meant to be. Do it all, feel it all, love it all, mess up a lot, because there's no such thing as messing up. Play.
Thank you so much for that. It was beautiful. And the final question is, if you could take one piece of wisdom that you have now and offer it to a younger version of yourself, what would that one piece of wisdom be?
Ooh, this one makes me emotional. You're going to be okay. You're not going to be sick forever. It's not going to be hard forever. You will be able to do what you came here to do. A little story. Toward the beginning of my awakening, I was doing my shadow work. I was really looking in the dark night of my soul, sort of moment, really looking at what created so many patterns. And I had a memory being pre-verbal, like a baby. And I was yelling, I was crying, and I was yelling. And the feeling that I had was, nobody here knows what they're doing. And how am I supposed to live my purpose? And I was so scared. I was so scared as that little pre-verbal baby that I wouldn't be able to live my purpose because everybody had gone to sleep. Nobody knew what they were doing. And so, yeah, I would love to tell my baby self, like, it's okay. Even that baby self was part of the illusion, thinking that something was wrong. And it's all working. It's all working, and it's all unfolding as it needs to, and it will work.
That was so sweet. Thank you so much. How do people find you, get in touch with you, or work with you if they feel led?
Yeah, wonderful. So let's see, my website is AllisonHolley.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And you can just kind of search that. And if you'd like to work with me, like I've been saying, I do teach channeling. And I also have lots of other different programs that come together with different insights that I've channeled. So I'll make sure that you have your link for that for my course called Learn to Channel. And let's see, also my books. So Ecstatic Playground is available on Amazon and some bookstores, getting it out there more and more. And then my first book is called The Era of the True Creator, and both of those are available on Amazon, soon to be Audible as well. So lots coming with those.
Awesome. I'll be sure to include all of those links to your website, to your books, to everything in the description of the show. And I just want to take a minute and just say thank you so much. This has been, I don't even have a word actually to describe like how much I've enjoyed this interview. It's just been so beautiful and so enlightening, and also just really validating. Like everything we've talked about feels like a remembrance, and I really feel that that's going to be how it's going to land for the audience as well. So thank you for following your heart, for following your passion, and for sharing yourself with the world. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chrissy. Thanks for having me. Thank you for following your purpose.
I would like to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss a beat. And if you really resonated with this content, please share it with all of your friends so that collectively we can expand our consciousness. Have a very blessed week.